Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello. Oh, hello. It's good to be here with you today. This is Greg and Deb here for a great episode. I've entitled this, Does the Impact of Peer Pressure Ever End? And boy, that's it. It's quite an interesting subject. I'm going to give a for instance here for why we started thinking about this, the impact of peer pressure, is that we see, these competitive youth programs. They're very good for kids getting involved and getting, some of the discipline. But there's a lot of pressure that can end up going through their whole life and not understanding that, who are they really competing against now? Are they just trying to keep up with others or what are they doing? So, but we're going to kind of start there because that sort of peer pressure, we tend to carry that through our whole life. And so we're going to give some other for instances there. So thanks for being with me.
Sure.
Here.
Hi, everybody.
Yep. So we kind of started thinking about this, seeing we are grandparents now, and we're seeing these 2-year-old birthday parties, and I mean, they're pretty elaborate, some of them, and we think it's great to celebrate, by the way. We love that. But some of these parents, we wonder, okay, how are they affording it? How are they, and what are the expectations? This is for their 1-year-old, their 2-year-old, and what are those kids, going to remember? So what are some of your thoughts on that, Greg?
Well, we were just thinking that, in comparison to when our kids were 2, we'd probably make them cupcakes and watch them get chocolate all over their faces and, hug them and make them feel loved. And that was the day. And today, we've visited some of our kids' friends during these birthday parties, and we just noticed there's a need to one-up whatever the last party was. Mm-hmm. And these are, kids, late 20s, early 30s, struggling to buy homes, pay for a growing family, and, spending close to $1,000 for a 2-year-old, 3-year-old birthday party. And whether that's good money spent or not, the issue is peer pressure is driving everything to go higher and higher. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we jumped in.
Yeah, it really was where we jumped in because we think it's great to celebrate. Of course, it's great. That's a really important part of life and with kids and growing up. But that sort of peer pressure to keep up and as I kind of took this through a whole life, because, Greg says, well, how are we going to answer the question? And I said, well, I don't think the peer pressure ever ends. So, but we're going to give some principles today to maybe help deal with it. But I really don't think it ends. And what are your thoughts? Do you think it ever ends?
No.
Yeah. I mean,
hopefully as you mature, you become more comfortable with your decisions, your values that you've intentionally adopted, mm-hmm. The ruts that you intentionally have put in place to help your life succeed. Mm-hmm. But I think all of us probably look at somebody else and go, wow, I wonder how they got there. I wonder if I did anything wrong, So,
yeah. The comparison, I mean, we had one of our neighbors that always told us how wonderful her kids were doing in school and tests and all of these things. And it was like, oh, you start that sort of comparison when you're a parent, at least.
These are the same kids that had been playing at our house. So we knew what they were like off script.
Yeah.
And the kids that this mom was describing were completely different kids.
Yeah.
So But, glad she was proud of her kids.
Right,
But at the same time, to feel the pressure to somehow artificially inflate who your children are is sad.
Or we have another instance now of a friend of a current friend of ours that still has some high schoolers going through, and in their school they had some of the parents, they hired out some writers for their kids to help write some of the papers so they could get in some major colleges. Well, are these kids learning how to write? No, not as good as they could. And she made their kids write their own papers, which we did too. And I think, you're not doing a service to these, to the kids and the people around when you're constantly thinking, well, we've got to do this to get here and just, with your sort of education and seeing what other parents are doing. Well, if they're doing that, then I need to do that too, or I need to and it carries across everywhere with buying homes, with everything that we do in the comparison with each other, with businesses, with, well, I should work with this particular coach because that's the one that's going to get me where, that's who everybody's working with, or that's what everybody's doing right now, or they're having this equipment. This sort of peer pressure continues, I think, through our whole life if we're not evaluating where we are first.
Yeah, and I think sometimes in our effort to self-actualize through the performance of our children, we force our children to take paths that they may have not wanted to path. Yeah, I was a professional baseball player, so I saw a lot of kids trying to make college baseball teams who were probably pretty good high school players, but they were mediocre college players, and there was no way they were going to play professionally. And as long as you like baseball, that's fun. But since then, because I had that in my brain, I've watched parents pay enormous amounts of money for the kids to play travel ball, whether it's volleyball, baseball, soccer, whatever. And these kids are, well coached, but the problem is they lack the athletic ability to really play in college. And they may not like it. There's nothing wrong with being really good at soccer, but not playing it in college. It gives you something you can play into your 30s. So the recreational aspect's fun, but when the parents cave to peer pressure, that becomes a problem. And parenting is a lot more about figuring out what your kids are good at, what their aptitudes are, and helping them pursue those than it is, making sure they're on the right travel ball team.
Right. And I see the same principles in art and in music.
Sure.
The same thing. And in dance. But we see, all of the other kids are doing this. They need some more private instruction. They need this to go, and it's great. I see a real benefit in discipline and with developing a love for the arts. All of our boys took music, but none of them are working professionally in that field right now. We had one that could. But
they all have a great appreciation for music. But
they really do.
When they finished high school, they let it go. We let them let it go.
Right.
And their lives are great.
Yeah.
So,
but they
I played the piano through high school.
Yeah. Greg played 8 years. Yeah.
So, but I didn't have any problem giving it up.
Right.
And I still recognize the white keys from the black keys. So
he does actually fairly well. Now he's surprised me now and then. And I think the well-roundedness is the important thing and this is not just all about parenting. This is about peer pressure, but it's how that sort of peer pressure that we have even as parents or as young kids, we might have experienced it ourselves. And if we had a parent in a particular area that maybe was in sports, that always dreamt of us being full-time in sports, and we can't hardly do a backflip or anything, and we're thinking, that's not the direction I want to go in my life. So you're still sort of feeling this expectation coming through. So I think some of that kind of carries through our life if we're not careful in not only with ourselves, but in our guidance of others or in coaching into where people are going. And it's part of the journey of finding people's sweet spot as well, because I've taught for so many years. And, I've had these students come to me and oh my gosh, I think I have, I really want to go for this. And I have had a couple really do well. They are working professionally, but most don't. But they're able to get a part in their high school and their college groups, or they're able to improve, do a little bit of studio work. But besides that, they're not choosing it as a profession. But they were still able to really, really enjoy it. And I think that's really important. So, we had a couple principles we're going to kind of outline here that may help you, hopefully. They've helped us to think about this area as well. One of them should probably be, as a grandparent, to keep our mouths shut. But
Absolutely.
Yes, it is difficult. But but it's important to be supportive, and we pray a lot. Okay, so I just put that in there. The first point that I made, you always there's this cute little look that you give me, like, oh, well, that was that came out of nowhere. Our first point is a predetermined plan. And I tell you what, when you become a parent, I just talked to a young mom about last week, and one of her kids was throwing an absolute hissy fit. I mean, completely berserk. And I leaned over and I said, "Isn't parenting fun?" And she said, if they really told me what was involved, I don't know if I would have signed up for this. And so when we talk about predetermined plan, whether it's in parenting, whether it's in grandparenting, whether it's in your business, plans change. But a predetermined plan, at least getting some guidelines to go through and what you want your life to look
So
like.
one of the things she forgot to tell you when she got so excited is that the first thing we came up with was having a predetermined plan.
Yes.
Will help you not bend to peer pressure.
Yes, yeah. So that was really important, to not bend to it completely. So.
And what we meant by that was we had a few principles that we had decided we were going to commit ourselves to. And those principles were going to dictate some of our decisions. So one of the principles was we weren't going to be in consumer debt.
Right.
We would take a mortgage on the house, but we were going to be in consumer debt. So if you're not going to have credit card debt, it limits the size of the birthday parties you can have.
Yes.
It makes the decision for you.
Right.
We decided that Sundays were going to be family time. So we didn't play sports on Sundays, and if the league required sports on Sundays, we didn't play, and that kind of impacted our football decision because that kind of required that. And it's not a discussion of whether today you should play on Saturdays or Sundays, or the fact is we made a decision,
right,
and that decision determined. What kind of peer pressure we were going to have.
Right.
And, when a couple makes a decision, what everybody else thinks doesn't matter.
Right.
So, because we made a decision, we knew why we made a decision, and we just kind of went from there. So, having decisions made in advance, we made a decision of what kind of corporal punishment we were going to give the kids and when, and for many people it'd be if, but if you're not going to spank, then you got to have a principle in place when somebody throws a hissy fit or somebody, rebels against you, once, and then you tell them you got to stop or there's going to be consequences, and then does it again. You got to explain what the consequences are, and then if it's not spanking, it's got to be something else. And you do it calmly, but once those principles are in place, we don't care what other parents are doing with their children, because we had a predetermined plan in place.
And that predetermined plan for parenting, we had to talk about it.
Well, that's the only way you come up with plans.
Yeah,
is
that's
you
the
gotta
only
talk about
way.
it.
You've got to talk about it. You've got to sit down and take the time to talk about it, because you can't just assume. And you come from different backgrounds. Yeah, you just can't just assume that you're going to do it one way. And figure out the major on the majors. What are you gonna major on? The main things. So that's really, really important with the predetermined plan. But a predetermined plan, of course, not only applies, we've really given a lot of illustrations in parenting because it's so applicable to our life. With having some sort of plan, that plan can change somewhat. Our kids, the type of punishment they had, or the consequences.
Well, obviously the consequences change by the time they're 3.
Right.
So
right. Yeah, definitely. But and now we have adult children, and we're watching the journey quite a bit more. We have episodes about that too. But yeah, as I'm looking at life, having this sort of plan in place of how are we going to respond. When you have conferences coming up and you're thinking, okay, how am I going to compare, myself with this particular person in this field, or this particular attorney, or this particular speaker, or this particular musician, or this particular group. I've been a part of a lot of arts conferences, and you can get on a big comparison trip here and feel horrible about it. All of a sudden there's this pressure. Oh, I need to bring a bigger group. Oh, I need to have a bigger room. I need to spend more money. That doesn't always pan out. It happens in every single business. So I think that's the important part of this. And
principle. Probably just one little thing is we are not discounting peer pressure as a positive at all, because groupthink a lot of times is pretty smart.
Right.
If everybody agrees on something, many times it's because they all figured out the shortcuts. Yes. They all figured out how to be most efficient.
Yeah.
And as general rule, industry adopts something, and that's the way they do it.
Right.
However, at some point, groupthink probably gets old, and it takes a righteous, defiant person to go, there's a different way of doing that. So you always need to maintain your independence and understand why we're doing this. And that, I think, leads to our next point, and that is confidence.
Confidence, yeah. To understand, and this is after you have this some sort of predetermined plan. It doesn't have to be every single thing in place. But having the confidence to fulfill that plan, and confidence to think of, this is the way.
Well, and the confidence that sort of says to oneself, I don't really care what other people think of me.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate confidence. Is that you'll entertain, you'll take under advisement, what other people think, but you aren't determined by what other people think, because you have inner confidence.
There's such freedom in that. I mean, an immense amount of freedom in that, of having that sort of confidence. And confidence does take courage. That's kind of the beginning of that, of saying, this is, I always look at some of these people with, I've never had the purple and green hair and all of that. Some people have, sported. Although I've thought about it sometimes, at, a dress-up party or something to be able to do. But there's a certain amount of confidence, and I respect that. There's a certain amount of confidence that people have to do things, that are a little bit different. Well, that takes some courage behind it, and you have that freedom to have your expression, and it does take that confidence, that stepping forward, the courage. So, and I think that leads us really to our third step, because first of all, we have this predetermined plan, which you have to communicate, have to talk about, especially...
Well, and develop together.
Yes, develop together. If you're raising a family, develop it. If you are in business for yourself, hopefully you have some people around you that you're able to help develop a plan, or just sit down with it, do a lot of journaling. And then the confidence to be able to pull it through. But also, the very last point is very important, is the follow through. Because a lot of people, they say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and they've never started.
Right.
You're on that starting line of a race, and you never get off the starting blocks.
Yep. I mean, the most important part of any plan is the first step.
Yeah.
So you got to execute. So who is it you always quote that I think it's Peter Drucker who talks about that planning is essential, but plans go out the window after the first shot's fired.
Yeah.
And you need to have a direction you're going. You need to know why you're going in that direction. You need to anticipate some of the pitfalls. But the reality is, life causes you to adapt. If you've got solid principles, your adaptation can kind of happen around the principle.
Right.
But best that we can tell, life is an art. It's not a science. And just if you can figure out how to get good principles, then your follow through is going to be figuring out how to apply those principles accurately to whatever life brings you.
And it's interesting when you brought that up, because I think we just spoke earlier today. I'm listening to a book on Lewis and Clark and their exhibitions. It's a very long book, wonderful. But I'm just to the point of Meriwether Lewis, and he's planning this expedition, and he's working with Thomas Jefferson. And it's fascinating. I've never been a history buff, but I'm more and more fascinated about what happened. And he's planning this trip that they're going into absolutely unknown, territory, what they're going to have to go around. But he's made his big list. But he did bring up the point, and he said, I've got the plans, but they may all completely change when we get there and as we're going, because they have to regroup. What if they came across an area of the river they can't cross? Well, that plan is they need to go a completely different way. This is life, what happens. But it is the follow. You at least have the plan. You have the confidence in that. And then the follow through may take going back to step one and revising your plan.
Sure.
and going about it. But yeah, it's the same principle in going to, when people go to, they say the armies, they go to war too. They have all their strategy, but it might change midway through. All of a sudden, there's some completely unexpected.
Right.
And they have to regroup, or, there's disaster waiting for them. So I think all of those are really important. So we brought up a couple little kind of takeaways here, and especially for kids. And what will your kids really remember with what you are doing? Again, we're going back to parenting. I know we've skipped around quite a bit, but it applies to our lives and our businesses too. What are people really remembering about you and about what you are doing? But what are your kids remembering? Like, we are recording this around the holiday of 4th of July, Independence Day. And every single year of our marriage until about, has it been 5 years that your mom, we celebrated Greg's mom's birthday, my mother-in-law. And our kids remember it, we remember it. She loved to party. And his grandmother did too. Her birthday was on the 1st. So it was, it was a constant thing. Those sort of memories. Now, do our kids remember some of the other special times? Yes, but they mostly remember the memories, the memories that we create together. And
yeah, I think that's what we wanted to get across is that the kids remember whether they grew up in a loving family or not.
Yeah.
Whether moments were taken out to make them feel special. They don't remember all of the sacrifices you made to make sure that you were on that travel ball team. So, some practices, some teams are important and add to their childhood, but work work harder at being consistently in love with your kids. And if it means that you don't have to have the $1,000 party, that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't need to take your kids to Marriott resorts every summer so that they can experience crazy water slides and amazing light shows. Horseback riding in the mountains is just fine.
Yeah. Although that does cost too, so just make sure you check that out. But it's great getting outside. I grew up camping, with my family too. So, but yeah, the simple things, and again, this applies to our whole life. And in the simple things, what sort of memories are you creating? And I think especially as we put this out now, everyone's tightening their belts a little bit. Things are costing more. Gas has gone through the roof, and it's okay. So how are you going to adjust? There's a lot of things that you can do simply, and a lot of even travel and all of those things. But sometimes we again still want to compare. Does this peer pressure ever end? I don't think it really does. It has to be checked, and I think as we check it, we can understand what's getting in the way of us creating just great memories and not feeling like we have to have the great trips or the great everything else that things are going on. So anything else to add on this?
No, that was good.
Yeah, I think this was, and again, this was on managing expectations, and we're going to do several of these on expectations, even athletic and everything else, but this was one of the expectations can still come into play big time, is triggered by that peer pressure. And so understanding that a little bit more and how it goes through our whole life is it can be very impactful for us in all areas of our lives. So, well, thanks for joining us. Remember to check out the newsletter every week. There's an article coming out every week. You'll want to make sure that you get the articles on the roundabout. There's 9 articles coming out. They come out every single week, right as this is being released. It'll be kind of in the middle of that, so you make sure you check out that, and a lot of free downloads with that as well. Get on our newsletter, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Again, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. You can reach me there. You can reach me at Deborah Johnson Speaker, at DJ Works Music. There's a lot of places. And of course, listen and follow and share with your friends. And thanks again for joining us. And bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.